Can you believe that we're exposed, everyone? Oh my gosh, what a novel concept. All right, so in today's video, we are talking about the short film that I just released for spooky season. It's called The Fog. I shot it like 6 months ago. I talked about it a little bit on the channel, but it's finally released so we can talk about how I made it. So the idea behind this short film was more of like, I got a request from Adorama Rentals to like film something creative that I wanted to work on. And I had been writing this longer kind of 20-minute, 16-page short film script, and I wanted to make something kind of as a proof of concept, like kind of spin-off of something in the same universe, to get another practice film in, to get another short film in where we can kind of flex our muscles, fail a little bit, learn some things. And so that was kind of the whole point of this film. This film was not showing off what Spencer Sakurai can do. That's not what the point of this was. This was another practice film. Just like anything you do in life, you can practice things to get better at them. I think the same thing goes for filmmaking. Fail, make mistakes, try out new things, and then you can go out and make a film that's important to you and the thing that you actually want to show off. And that's actually what I'm trying to do next. That's the longer film, the 16-page film, but more on that at another time. So The Fog is about a woman who gets invaded in her house by a man, but that man has something going on with him, something a little paranormal. And if you haven't watched the film, definitely go watch the film now before you watch this video, or I'm going to spoil a lot of the film for you. Yeah, so basically the man has this fog-like entity inside of him, and it's looking for a new body to host, and it's going after this woman. And so I wanted to keep this film contained, keep it in one location in a house, just a couple of actors. And so that's what we did here. And the whole point here was to kind of try out some new gear and some new techniques and learn a little bit from this. So we shot most of the film on the Red V Raptor in 8K RAW. I made a video about this over on Adorama, and I made another video on my channel about the Red Raptor overall. But as it pertains to this film, you know, we had the Sigma cinema lenses on there. We were basically shooting wide open the whole time. And now we did this out of practicality. We did not do this for the shallow depth of field because actually, when it comes to cinema, I like to have a little bit of depth of field, a little bit of, you know, the surroundings in focus. We did this just so we could light really quickly and not use a lot of power, which I completely regret. So we were shooting basically at 1600 ISO, maybe 800 ISO sometimes, at T15 on the Sigma Cinema primes almost the entire time. And my gaffer friend John Dewberry was there to help us out, and we were using the Nanlite Pavo tubes for a lot of the interior lighting. And then we had a Nanlite Forza 500 outside the windows, pumping through the windows with a Fresnel on them, acting kind of as the moonlight. Then we had a lot of practicals in the room, you know, then the lamps. I actually went out and bought another lamp just for this scene and a side table, something that we could actually wreck for that shot where she kind of goes through the lamp, which is a really nice little hack. Just hit up a thrift store, you know, less than 20 bucks. You can walk out with a new lamp and a side table and just get your art department really cheap that way. But we actually used the Aperture B7C bulbs in a couple of those in order to get the temperature that we wanted and have full control over the power, rather than having to use dimmers on with a regular incandescent bulb. So for the first day of shooting, we had the Red Raptor in from Adorama Rentals to shoot with, but we weren't able to capture all of the shots in that one night of shooting, which was unfortunate. I'd really only planned for one night. I was like, we can do this, you know, 10 hours of shooting. We're gonna be able to get this 6-page script, 5.5-page script done. Well, it turns out when you're doing horror, things you need to draw out the scenes, and even with, you know, quite a few hands on set, we needed more time to get more shots. And this is actually really common in filmmaking and short filmmaking, feature filmmaking. You need to have some contingency days to, you know, kind of fill in the gaps, get some shots, get some pickups. So what I did, you know, right after I did that first day, I actually did an assembly cut of the film. I obviously knew there were some things that I did not have filmed already, but there was also some other things I wanted to add on the second day of shooting, and we were able to go back and get those shots. But we didn't have the Red V Raptor for the second day, so we had to switch to my personally owned Red Komodo. And I think this is actually a really fun thing to experiment with, because the Red Komodo, you know, it's a 6K Red RAW camera. It's only about $6,000, and the Red Raptor is about $30,000. So we're going to see how they would cut together. And in this, we didn't also have the Sigma Cinema primes, but a lot of my friends have the regular Cinema DSLR EF lenses. So we actually put those in front of the camera. It's actually kind of like shooting the exact same setup, but much, much cheaper. And I think any viewer of this film would never be able to guess which camera was used for which shot. And because I regretted how we lit, you know, mostly with like kind of 2 foot, 4 foot tubes and practicals during the first day. The second day we broke out the Aperture P300C, the Nova, and we lit with a lot more light, and I just brought everything down in post for the exposure to match the Red V Raptor. So we're actually shooting around 400 to 800 ISO with plenty of light for the second day of shooting versus the first day, which was like 1600 ISO, 2 foot nanlite tubes, going through diffusion, not a lot of light. You know, it really shows, you know, I think that generally speaking, I've done a lot better with my cinematography before, but I was trying to direct and be the cinematographer on this. I did have my friend Corey Robinson as the cam op, and I had my friend John Dewberry being the gaffer. So I had people supporting me as a cinematographer, but this was a really good lesson in knowing that it's really hard to do both and to be able to problem solve everything as a cinematographer and a director at the same time. And that's why in this next film that I'm about to do, this much more ambitious short film, I'm actually bringing in a cinematographer for this, and I will not be shooting it myself. And then for the stuff in the kitchen, we had a 4 foot nanlite tube bouncing into the ceiling on a spreader that was just mounted up on the ceiling, kind of acting as a little bit of a fill light. And then we have the practicals on in the room there. And we needed to do this because we're doing a 360-degree Steadicam shot. We were having a Steadicam, walk through, do big turns, and we needed everything to be lit, the whole space to be lit, and we couldn't show a light in the shot. Actually, we did something kind of fun here. If you notice in that shot, we're starting pointing into the kitchen, but then we kind of rotate back around pointing against the window going outside. Now, the outside window does have that Forza 500 out there shooting across the trees and the lawn, but we would have had a reflection from that nanlite pavo tube in the ceiling bouncing off that window and reflecting, and we would have lost all that blackness, and we would have shown off Corey, the Steadicam operator, if we would have kept that on. So we actually had John, the gaffer, timing right when he was on the monitor and right when that camera pulled around, he turned off that nan light, and it worked seamlessly. You can never tell that he turned it off, and that reflection goes away that way. We were able to go right into blackness. And speaking of blackness, so the opening shot, we actually shot at T15 1600 ISO on the Raptor. In post though, I did bring down that ISO to get rid of some of that noise, and I had to use noise reduction on that shot because it was very underexposed. So most of that street is actually lit practically, but when he walks into the light, we've got a Forza 500 with a aperture lantern on it, raised really high in the air next to that light pole. And that's acting as the street light there, but we had full control over it that way. We had it boomed up pretty high in the air. And then when we turn to the house, there's lots of little lights on that are on the trees, and that's all practical lights that were already there. But then we did have another Forza 500, I believe, way off in this distance, just with the open reflector on it, shooting across everything to give light across the yard and to give nice shadows across the whole thing so you can actually see what's going on there, but still having blacks and lights everywhere, so it still feels like you're at night, but you can actually see the house fully and the trees. But that was really the only shot outside except for the one where she kind of walks outside the garage. And for that, it's almost completely practically lit from an overhead. I think we might have had a lantern up. We ended up just turning it off. So that stuff was very underexposed as well. But you know what? We were moving fast and trying to get this film done in a night, which we didn't end up doing anyways, but that's okay. That's kind of what happens when doing these short films like that and you don't have all the support and time to make something. So most of the shots opening all the way till when she gets into the bathroom are done with the Red V Raptor. A couple of the shots in the living room after that were done with the Raptor, but basically everything after she goes into the bathroom is done with the red Komodo. And I actually had to pull my own focus on this off the monitor and had Corey operate. So I was directing and pulling focus the second day because we didn't have our full crew that we like we did the first day. And once we're in the bathroom, we had to do some tricky stuff because we basically had to do day for night in order to make the schedule work with the actor. So we took a big white silk and kind of draped it over the back fence area. And then we put a big also negative fill out there too, a big solid in order to kind of sell that night effect. I don't think it's perfect, but I definitely don't think anyone's noticing it when they're watching it for the first time. So there's a little bit of daylight leaking into that window, and that's actually acting as our moonlight. And then I had a little nanlite pavo tube just kind of up in the ceiling, giving us a little bit extra fill when we were shooting the other directions from that window. And then it's just a symbol of white balancing differently, going to much cooler white white balance to make that daylight feel more like moonlight. And some of these shots were tricky. I mean, Corey literally took the Komodo and had to get inside the bathtub to shoot through the crack there. And it's a little shaky, but I think it still sells. But the shot I really like is when we're doing the POV of pointing under the door there. And to get that shot, we actually just took a beadboard and wedged it between the door, and then got it so it's pretty high off the ground. I mean, I think in the shot it looks like a normal like under the door crack that would be like maybe this tall, but ours was actually like this tall to get that shot and to sell it. And we had a little light coming from the hallway, probably a nanlite pavo tube out there to give that kind of tungsten reflection off the ground. And that was just a matter of putting the camera as close as we could to the ground and going back and forth. But in order to get that kind of all the way to the ground like that, we couldn't get the camera too low, so we had to make that gap really big. And I think it totally works. And then when she kind of goes out the door there, we just have a nanlite pavo tube shooting into the ceiling there. It's bouncing off, acting kind of like some sort of moonlight fill coming from down the hallway. And I really like that shot, and that's one of my favorite shots. It just, from a cinematography standpoint, from a lighting standpoint, that shot just looks really clean. I really like the tones there. It's nice. So from there, it's mostly self-explanatory. A lot of the cinematography is the same. It's kind of like use the practicals, throw up a nanlite or a nova with some diffusion to light our actors, you know, coming from practical lights, you know, motivated by the practical lights, and then keeping that moonlight outside. But then where things started to get tricky again is when we had to do the very last scene there. But this is when all the fog effects broke out, and I wanted to do most of these practically, and that's kind of where the fun really happened in this film. So to pull off the effect, we used a regular style fog machine that you can get from Walmart or whatever. But in order to control the fog and move the fog how we wanted to, we used the hose from a shop vac to direct the fog where we wanted it to go. And then another technique that we use is we use a little diffuser that came with the shop vac and put it on the end, and then put a little light ice in the tube. And then we would shoot fog through the tube. It would cool down, which would keep it low on the ground and make sure it doesn't float up into the air. And then diffuse out that diffuser, and that would make the fog really thick. And that's basically how we got a lot of these shots. Now, each shot has its own different kind of fog effect, and you can really tell. So sometimes we weren't using the diffuser, sometimes we weren't using ice, and so on and so forth. It's just a matter of timing everything right to make the fog kind of enter the frame when we wanted it to, but we were able just to use that hose to direct it wherever we needed it to go. And I really just wanted to do this as much practical as I could. I didn't really have any visual effects person to help me with it, so we were like, let's just do it practically. It'll look so much better and be so much easier to shoot. And it really did. It really worked pretty well. Now, to do the shot where the fog's actually entering her body, we had to do a composite shot here. So what we did was take the fog, like we were doing before, with the tube and the ice, and then we took the shop vac and put another tube on that end and stuck it to the ground, taped it to the ground on the vacuum to suck in the fog that we then came out of the fog machine through the tube with ice in it. And we put that in the exact same spot that we had her laying, and basically got a plate of that, of her laying there, and then we did the exact same thing again with the fog. We actually wrapped her and let her go home, and then the rest of it after she left. And I think that effect really turned out well. It was something that we just tested in my kitchen one time, and we just kind of, you know, crossed our fingers and hoped it would work on the day, and I think it really turned out well. It's exactly what I was picturing in my head. But there was one visual effects shot with the fog that we needed, and I got this way late. You know, I was sitting there doing the edit, and I was like, oh no, we didn't, when we got a reverse shot of her, the first time he blows fog out of his mouth. And for that shot, he actually just used a vape. You know, he sucked in some vape, some fog into his mouth for that, and then we yelled action. He just blew that out, and we filmed that shot in slow motion, but because he's not moving at all, it looks like it's just coming out in a really slow effect, but that's actually a slow motion shot there. But I realized on the reverse shot of her, there was no fog in the frame. We forgot to fog at her in that shot. And so in post, I actually had to add some fog myself. And I was able to do this super easy using Motion Array, which is today's sponsor. Motion Array is a marketplace with over 7,000 high quality video assets like video templates, stock footage, photos, music, and sound effects for anyone who wants to create videos. It's membership based, which means you can sign up for a month or a year and you get everything. You can download whenever you want and use it whenever you want. And if you sign up with the link in the description, you get an extra $50 off your annual membership. Motion Array is the quickest way to make your content look amazing. You can go from good to great. Just like I did here, needing that fog asset, I was able to grab that asset from Motion Array, download it, and quickly start using it. You can try it for free. Obviously, you won't have access to all of the assets, but that might be a quick way to figure out how it can benefit you and your creations. So sign up using my link in the description. So thanks to Motion Array for sponsoring today's video, because without Motion Array, I would have not been able to get that fog effect on that reverse shot. So I learned a ton from making this film. I'm really glad that I made another practice film, because taking on this much more ambitious film that I'm about to do, I have a lot more confidence with doing it now. Now, a lot of people probably are wondering why I keep making horror films versus like a regular style like drama short film or something like that. And I'm going to make probably a whole other video on this, because I think it's important to talk about why I'm making horror. Yeah, I like horror. I think it's a fun genre and that's why I'm playing in it, but there's a lot of reasons why your first films, your practice films should be horror, and there's a lot to talk about that. We need to talk about building suspense and how suspense is in almost every movie. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content over that sort of thing, more of the narrative filmmaking side of things, because there's going to be a lot more of that coming on the channel now, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make movies and I'm really excited about that stuff right now. So expect more content like that here on the channel. So if you have any questions about this short film, please feel free to leave those in the comments below. I'll do my best to reply, or maybe I will make a follow-up video where I answer all those questions. So definitely get in the comments and ask me some stuff if you have any questions about the film. I'd be happy to answer those there. So that's all I have for this video today. As always, I'm Sensor Sakurai. See ya.